All right, welcome into another episode of Hockey Royalty. Today we got a very special guest for you guys today, Mr. Chris Peters. We're going to be talking all things draft. Stay tuned to find out. Short and simple intro. Welcome in, Chris. How you doing?
Brandon, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. It's always good to be talking hockey, talking draft, and it's finally almost there. So that feels even better.
I know it comes quick, and when the Kings have been knocked out quite early in the standings as of late, and so the debate over Stützle or Byfield or who to take at 5 was endless months of debates, and now with a little bit of playoff luck, it sneaks up on you.
Yeah, it does. I'm sure it does, especially for the people that have been tracking the playoffs. I mean, for me, it feels like it took forever to get here. At the same time. You always think you have more time than you do in the given draft season. So in that way, it does sneak up, and you're just like, oh wow, I got to get my final rankings out and all this other stuff. But once you finally get there, and you're just like, man, I don't know if I can think much more about this class, and looking forward to moving on to the to the next one, and just getting ready for that. But it's been another weird draft season too, where we had a lot of leagues and different things that didn't go all the way through, or had to pause for COVID reasons, or we lost the World Juniors 2 days into it this past time. So it's been a strange year, and I'm looking forward to next season because it feels like that'll be the closest to a true draft season. But I've definitely embraced the challenge of the kind of season that we had the last few seasons that we've had, where we kind of had to do things a little bit differently than normal just to make sure that we're making the most of the time that we do have.
Yeah, I'm sure it's been interesting for you as well, moving from ESPN to the Daily Faceoff and everything like that. New beginnings, new draft season, just kind of taking over. A lot of change, huh?
Yeah, I guess that's the nature of the media business as well. It's a pandemic cut from ESPN, and then the timing was pretty crappy because they ended up getting the rights shortly thereafter, which didn't make me feel too good. And then I was on my own for a while as well, and basically did the draft on my own site last year, and then was lucky enough to get picked up by Daily Faceoff. And yeah, it's been a whirlwind couple of years, but I really appreciate Frank Saravalli for bringing me on there, and learned a lot from him, and learned a lot from the rest of the staff that we have. And it was just nice to be able to put my rankings out on a platform there that it was going to reach a lot of people. Usually I was behind a paywall. This has been free and available to anybody that wants to check it out on dailyfaceoff.com, which is it has its positive, obviously it reaches more people that way, but it also it reaches more people, and they like to they have their own
like to tear you up, huh?
Things. Yeah, it happens from time to time, but I mean, I certainly enjoyed that challenge.
Well, I think that's an interesting segue to the first topic here, because this might be quite divisive, is Cooley on top. So your rankings came out, and as far as where you would rank not the mock draft, but where you would rank the prospects there. And you've had typical number 3 overall, Logan Cooley, as your number 1. So maybe tell fans why you put him there and over Shane Wright and you're off.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the general, the simplest explanation is, so I've had Cooley at the top since my mid-season board. That came out right after the canceled World Juniors. And that was a feeling that I had kind of started generating over the course of the season. And Shane Wright didn't have the best start to his year. And so that at least allowed the possibility to entertain other players at the top. And so I took that time to just investigate which of the players. And at that point in the midseason, Juraj Slafkovský hadn't played in the Olympics yet. He hadn't played in the World Championship. He was not producing at a high level. He looked okay at the World Juniors in the couple of games that Slovakia played. So it wasn't like he was really bursting onto the scene at that point. But Logan Cooley was. He made Team USA, was their number 2 center at the World Juniors. He looked great there when he was playing. And then, obviously everything got shut down. So that was disappointing to lose that, because we had Slafkovský, Wright, and Cooley all there at the same time, which would have been nice to see. But the reason that Cooley jumped up to number 1 for me and stayed there is because I think he's the most dynamic player in this draft. I think he has the best skater of those 3 players. He has a track record of production. He's shown tremendous improvement year over year. And, you know, I think that basically he plays the style of game that you are watching in the playoffs right now. He is competitive. He is fast. He processes the game at an incredibly fast pace. The thing is that this year's draft, and the reason that there is so much debate, is that none of the three guys that we've been talking about as the potential number one, and I'm really the only one that's talking about Cooley as being the number one pick, but I do know that there are teams out there that like him quite a bit. The reason that there's debate is because none of these guys have necessarily produced at the level that you would expect from a number one overall pick. And so that's kind of something that we've been talking about all year, is that nobody's really seized the number one spot, not even Shane Wright. He had a good season. It wasn't an amazing season. He wasn't even the leading scorer on his own team. You know, that is one of those things where you just don't often see that. That said, you know, he and Cooley, if you weight the two leagues, their production was very similar. They both averaged about 1.4 points per game over the course of the season. The reason Slafkovsky I'm a little bit lower on is because, you know, we've seen him dominate in international tournaments, but at the club level, he hasn't necessarily played at the level that you would expect of a top tier guy. And so I do have some concern about, you know, how that would all work. I would say that probably of the three, Slafkovsky is the most NHL ready, because I think if you put him with skilled players, he would thrive in that scenario. He's also the biggest of the three. But in the end, it all came back to Cooley's hockey, his combination of speed, skill, hockey sense, competitiveness. The fact that he's not the biggest didn't bother me. He's only about 1.5 inches shorter than Shane Wright anyway. You know, it's not really that big of a deal to me. I just think that he plays the style of game that is the way that the NHL is going. And of the three players, I think the ceiling is highest on Cooley because of his skill level and where he's gone from year to year. There's still room for him to get stronger and be better. And I think he could be a star if everything goes right for him.
Do you think players like maybe Capo Caco and Urov that come in out of nowhere during the season is from over scouting of players like Shane Wright, who have been on the scene for 3+ years?
You know, I think it's just the natural progression of a draft year. Typically, you know, I think that we have guys that we think are top end at the beginning of the year, and then you just don't see the progression. You don't see them go further. But then you have a guy like a Slafkovsky or like a Capo Caco in his draft year, where he just shot up all the way and just was continuing to improve, and then played his best hockey in the playoffs and the World Championship. And then all of a sudden you're saying, wow, this guy just keeps winning. You know, that's where you start seeing some of that separation. But yeah, I mean, I think in the end, guys like Shane Wright, they almost get a pass for a while because all the focus has been on them. But then they're like, oh, we don't have to worry about that. We'll go watch other players. But then, you know, you still do have to watch. And I think that what you're seeing now is what scouts have been kind of watching, is saying, okay, well, he's not where we thought he would be by this point. These other players are trending up. And they've had, you know, in Cooley's case, he was the best forward at the World Under-18 Championship. In Slafkovsky's case, he was the MVP of the Olympics, and then also Slovakia's best player at the World Championship. So, you know, they had those like last impressions that were very strong as well, which it's not just recency bias. It's the culmination of a season-long evaluation. You know, so it's not just that they did well there, that people are all like, you know, like, yeah, let's move them ahead. I mean, I did it at mid-season for Cooley, and, you know, ultimately the decision came down to what were the reasons that I had him number one at the midseason, and did they change? And they didn't for me. He was still the most dynamic, skilled player. So that's kind of, yeah, it can happen. It can certainly happen that way, but I don't think it's as, I just think it's more about the natural progression of a season and the way that players, you know, kind of rise and fall.
Nice. In a recent mock draft for Hockey Royalty at hockeyroyalty.com, Lane Hutson fell into the laps of Kings fans here in the second round. You have him with a mid-first round grade. Obviously, pint size, to say the least, is the main issue with a lot of people, you know, assessing his talent level or how far he could go. I've heard that only half the teams at the draft even talked to the kid. I also heard that he met with an endocrinologist saying that his bone density or bone age is younger than what he is, and he still has a chance to grow. I don't know what you heard coming out of the combine and where your feeling is on Lane Hutson, but like talk about his game and then talk about what your feeling is about him potentially playing NHL hockey.
Yeah. So full disclosure, Lane Hutson's been my favorite player in this class the entire year. Not, just the guy that I hope makes it, the guy that I hope proves people wrong, because I love the way that he plays. And he is the most dynamic defenseman in this draft class. He's got great skill, tremendous puck skills, great passing ability, elite vision, elite hockey sense, a deceptive skater, but he's 5'8", 158 pounds. And it is a factor. When you are a defenseman in the NHL, it is very difficult to play at that height and weight. It's not unprecedented. Obviously, we have guys like Jared Spurgeon, Torrey Krug that aren't the biggest guys, but like in Krug's case, he became like a pit bull and just bulked up like crazy and had a tremendous lower body strength and all this other stuff. I did hear about the endocrinologist. I actually heard about that before the combine, and about the work that's being done to just kind of address why he does seem a little bit developmentally behind. You look at Lane Hutson, you say, is he somebody's little brother? Is he a stick boy? Like that kind of thing. And so he hasn't really had that physical growth. He does have an older brother as well that grew late. And he's 5'11" now. So there is a chance that happens. And if it does, it's great. And I think if he was legitimately, if he was 5'11", I think he's a top 10 pick, and that's size does matter. But, I think, to me, he has the chance to be a star defenseman. It's just a matter of, does the team believe that he can do that? Will they give him enough time to get stronger, to develop? So here's the interesting thing about Lane Hutson. When you see a guy like him and you say, okay, well, he's 5'8", 158 pounds. He is, how can he possibly defend anybody? And then you watch him and he has the best defensive stick in this draft. He has, he is around the puck constantly. He is hounding the opposition. He is an immense competitor. And you just say, man, if he were only, if you continue to say, man, if he were only bigger, but then he keeps making plays, you have to at some point believe that he can do it. So I have him, in that like lower third of the first round. I think that he has a chance to go earlier. I think it's more likely he goes later. I think it's even likely that he slips out of the first round altogether. However, if he does manage to slip and there's a team that I don't think he would last very long in that second round, because he's worth taking a chance on, because of the skill, because of the competitiveness, all of those things. So I think the player is pretty special. I think he could be a top 4 defenseman if, he does get a little bit bigger, and if he's able to tack on more muscle and everything goes well. You're obviously taking a big risk if you're just banking on that to happen, though. So teams do have to be careful, but I think the player himself is an exceptional talent, and I hope that he does go in the first round, because I do believe he belongs in that range, especially in this year's class. And I think that he's going to have a chance to prove a lot of people wrong here, if everything goes right for him.
Yeah, I think with him he's going to the NCAA, I believe Notre Dame, correct?
He's going to Boston University.
University.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
But the NCAA they play less games. They can focus a lot more on building his body and getting in the weight room. And so this might be the best avenue for him to eventually make the NHL.
Yeah, I think that he is a guy that's going to need time, and he's going to need 2 to 3 years in college, and you're going to need him to show that you could be that. But you look at right now at the top two, the last 2 Norris Trophy winners were college hockey players, and you look at how they developed. I mean, Adam Fox needed to get a lot stronger. He needed to become a better skater. He needed to be better. Cale Makar took an extra year of college. He probably didn't need it, but he took it because he felt it was going to help him get better. And I think you look at a guy like Lane Hutson, and he doesn't fit the physical profile of those 2 guys, but he's going on that same path. And if you give him the time and development, I think it's going to work out great for him.
Going into the next topic, Mark Yannetti constantly talks about a tiered approach and how the Kings draft, and drafting for the tier, taking best player available, because you're ultimately trying to get the best hockey player and not drafting for team need. Where do you have the tiers in this draft? I've seen a lot of people say, there's like top 13 or top 12 or top 14. Where's that tier for you? And is there somebody in that tier that could fall to the Kings at 19, in your opinion?
Yeah. So my tiers are little bit. So like basically I ended up with 6 tiers of my top 100 essentially. So, and the top tier for me is 1 to 3. It's Wright, Cooley, Slafkovsky. That's, I think there's a significant drop off from there. The next is 4 to 11 for me. And could there be guys that fall in that range from my personal board? Absolutely. You know, like Frank Nazar could slip a lot further than I expect him to, or you know, there could be Danila Yurov is number 11. So how far does he drop? Is he in the mix? And he's, you know, our team's going to take Russians. You don't know. The next tier is a little bit bigger. It goes 12 to 25 for me, where I still think that you have guys that have potential impact players. They're upside. They have good upside. And then after that, it's like 26 to 39, 40 to 74, 75 to 100. That's kind of how I have it. And those tiers, you know, obviously like, you know, tier 4 is like likely to play in the NHL. Tier 5 is like they have upside, but I don't know if they're going to make it. And then tier 6 is maybe they'll make it. You know, so I would say that the Kings are sitting in a good spot. I think 19 is still a very strong place where you can find a lot of different players. You're going to have your pick. I think there's going to be a number of defensemen available there. Hutson very well could be there. You know, Ryan Chesley. You know, is there somebody that could potentially fall even further than that? You know, I think about guys like Matthew Savoy. How far is, you know, he seems to be kind of trending down. Is he going to be available in the later stages of the first round? It's really tough to say. We just don't know yet. And I think the thing about being at 19 is it's a good spot because there's going to be good value there. But it's also a tough spot because what happens around you could go so many different directions. So it's really hard to anticipate the type of player that'll be there. I think that, you know, within the tier system, 19 is well within the range to still land an impact prospect. So that's the good news. And then, as you mentioned, there's a chance to trade the pick as well. You know, like there's a chance to move that pick or trade down or do whatever with it. And they'll know pretty early on in that first round as it progresses what they want to do, what's going to be available, and how they want to proceed with that pick. But yeah, it's a very unpredictable first round, I think.
In one of your other articles, you said on what teams need to assess in this draft. You keep stockpiling for the Los Angeles Kings, being that there's no positional need for them to take in the first round in their prospect pool. There's been plenty of stuff on Twitter that they need a bigger left-handed defenseman, but I believe forcing a pick is in the first round just for positional need for a team that he might play for 2-3 years down the line. It's not the approach they need. What picks, as far as like with your mock draft, and who are some of your favorite players that could be available at that 19th spot that are in that third tier of yours?
Yeah, so I think a number of guys that would fit. Like if you let's just take that. I agree with you that you don't want to necessarily go stretch for positions or needs, especially in the first round, and just go for whatever. You just try to pick the best player available. But let's just, for instance, use those. I would say that two guys that immediately jump to mind is bigger, lefty, that can play with, pace and be pretty solid overall. I would say, like there's Owen Pickering from the Swift Current Broncos, who's, a brilliant skater at a 6'3" frame. He's got some physicality to him. He's raw. He's a bit of a project. You're going to kind of have to wait and see exactly how he's all going to, fill out. And also is the hockey sense going to be there? He's going to need to be thicker to play at his size, but he's bigger. He's like 6'4", 6'5" even. So that's a guy that absolutely could be there in that range. And it would make sense. Leon Bichelle, same thing. You're looking at a guy who is Swiss, played it all year in the Swiss Pro League. I'm starting to wonder if he'll even be there for the Kings at that point, because he is, really starting to rise up the charts in terms of what he's been able to do. He's 6'5", 220, and hits everything, and just he's physical and mean, but he's also just a tremendous skater. And so he's another guy where you say, wow, we can address a need, and we can also get a guy that we think is going to be really solid. Doesn't have a lot of offensive upside, which I think is, I think that Pickering has more offensive upside there. But he's real interesting in that regard. Jagger Firkus is an undersized winger that I have pretty high, like top 15. that I think will more than likely not go in the top 15, but is real interesting to me. He's a skilled guy. He can make some plays, good scoring ability, really great shot. So that's another kind of player you could see there. But I mean, really, I could give you a list of 20 to 30 players that make sense in this range. That's how, dramatic the differences are between some of these players. Aren't, I should say, because they're more like tightly packed together. It's like, oh, I can see that guy, this guy, the other guy. But I think, if you were just to look off of, looking off of my own board, even, guys that would be kind of in that range, it's Ryan Chesley, who, right shot defenseman, Lane Hutson, Luca Del Belbaluz. There's a lot of guys that kind of fit in there. So the way that the Kings have operated over the last few years with their prospects, I think it's just simply going to be, they're going to pick the guy that they had next on their list. And whoever that's going to be is probably going to be a good player, because they've done really well over these last few years. And as I said, you keep stockpiling. The more assets you have, the more options that are available to you to either use them as everyday players or to move on from them in trades and whatever else. There's still so much you can do with those picks and those prospects that you're continuing to stockpile up.
Yeah, I've been a big proponent of them taking Ivan Miro Tashenko, just because I think he'll be there with the cancer news. And I think he, like you said in your evaluation, that he's probably a top 5, top 10 pick if the health was there all season long. And you just go for the high upside player because the pool is so deep. So I've been hammering that drum. Yeah,
no, that makes a ton of sense to me, for sure.
Going into the next topic, between the pipes, this is the first year in quite a while that there hasn't been a first-round goalie in the discussion. A lot of scouts even say that there shouldn't be a goalie taken in the first 2 rounds, with it being kind of a weak. I don't know if you necessarily agree with that. And then who are some of your goalies that maybe the Kings should take a shot at that have a potential to break through?
Yeah, so I do agree. My first goalie on my board isn't even on there until 73rd. And I think that might be high. But Tyler Brennan is that goaltender. He plays for Prince George. It's a total upside play. His numbers were fair this year. He was on a not a great team, but he has that prototypical size. He's got the athleticism. He's got some real good potential to be a good goalie. And I like him quite a bit. I think that in terms of the upside, but again, it's like, that's not a guy that I would take until the 3rd round. Topias Leinonen is the top European goalie this year from Finland. Same thing, great size. I have concerns about his pre-shot reads, his hockey sense overall, and just he did not have a good under-18 World Championship, which gave me a lot of concern. I thought he was, a weak link on his team. But you see the size, the athleticism, the different things that he can do, and you say, well, there's something there. There's upside there. This will be interesting because there are a couple of, I think some of the best goalies in this class are under 6'2", and some teams will just say under 6'2", no thanks, see you later. We're not going to do it. But guys that are under 6'2" that I think at least have a chance, and it's a long shot. So these are going to be guys that you'd pick later. Sergei Ivanov, who is a Russian, obviously Russian goalie, and about 5'11", very quick and competitive. He battles for a lot of pucks. He kind of reminds me a little bit of UC Saros, just in the size profile and the way that he battles. But I think Saros he's a unicorn. Like, he's one of the few guys that at 5'10", you're like, that guy is unbelievable. Takes up a lot of net, or he's quick enough to recover. But a lot of teams are just going to chase size. And so you got that. And then you also have Hugo Havelid, who was the goalie for Sweden in their gold medal game. They beat Team USA. He was the biggest reason they won. They were vastly outshot, and he just made every save that you could ask him to make pretty much in that game, and kept his team in it. So, those are a number of guys. And I think the sleeper of the group is probably Reed Dick, who was Canada's goalie at the World Under-18s. And he played on on that same Swift Current team that you're going to hear a lot of guys drafted from, even though they were pretty poor this year. And Reed Dick he's got that athleticism, that competitive drive. You see it, he fights for pucks. He's battling traffic. He can do a lot of different things. So I do think that he's another guy that will certainly be picked, and at least has some upside to be an NHL goalie.
Thank you for coming on again. We got one more topic here for you. And second or third round gems. Kings have had some quite a few. from the likes of Brock Faber, Arthur Kaliyev, Akil Thomas in recent years, Francisco Pinelli. Where do you think that there could be some gems here? Obviously, maybe players in your top 30 that fall, or maybe, you know, players that I see right here at 53, David Goyette from Sudbury, who has high offensive skill, but maybe lacks the consistency that a good coaching or a good development team could get out of him.
Yeah, you know, he's really interesting. I just would like to see him just be a little better game in, game out. You know, I thought his under 18 Worlds was a pretty poor last impression, and you know, I just worry about, you know, compete sometimes there and overall hockey sense. But he's obviously skilled and fast. So, you know, Goyette is certainly a guy that you could probably get in the second round and be happy with. You know, I'll be very interested to see where Jack Hughes from, not, you know, another Jack Hughes, but this one plays for Northeastern, and his dad's the GM of Montreal. You know, I think that he's one of those guys that has played below his standard for a while, which is obviously a concern. You don't like to see that when a guy's playing below their standard, but I think that there's still a lot of skill in there, a lot of craftiness, and I think he could be a guy that, you know, whoever gets him probably in the second round is going to have a guy that at least has potential. He's got a long way to go. He's got to get stronger. He's got to be better. He just didn't have a lot of points this season. He was kind of in the first round conversation for a lot of the year. That's a guy to keep an eye on in that second round. You know, I think Reed Schaefer, if he falls to the second round, playing for Seattle right now, had a great postseason run. They fell just short the WHL championship, but he was a big part of it. You know, he's got some power to his game. Decent skater, not amazing, but a goal scorer with skill and good hands and a good competitive drive. So he's interesting as well. And then, you know, I mean, at that point, I think really anywhere the guys that I have on my list on Daily Faceoff, you go all the way down to, you know, 60 and maybe a little bit further. You know, 60, yeah, even further than that, I'd say like 65 to 70. Those are all guys that I think could very easily be solid second round picks that, you know, in this class, they could make a difference for a team. But yeah, it's just there's a lot of guys that you just don't know. There's a lot of maybes in this class, a lot of guys that have, you know, this flaw or that flaw that gives you pause about them. So I think there are fewer true first round talents in this draft, but there's a lot of guys that you would normally see in a second round, third round situation that could be providing some real value to the teams that take them.
Yeah, it'd be quite interesting to see how the board falls. I think with this draft, like you said, you know, and the way the scouting went this year and how teams view certain players, I think there's going to be a lot of what were they thinking or reaches, or because if they like a certain guy, they go out and get them, and maybe other people didn't because of the amount of scouting or lack of scouting for certain regions. Chris Peters, it has been a phenomenal time. Thank you again for coming on. You guys can find him at Chris M. Peters on Twitter. Give him a follow. All his stuff is for the Daily Faceoff is coming out. Do you have any columns that you want to plug that are coming out shortly?
You know, I think we'll be getting our mock drafts going here. We'll have a 2-round mock draft coming up pretty soon, and I also have a piece coming out about the best prospects at each skill. So that'll be coming out soon as well on Daily Faceoff.
Yeah, follow him on Twitter for those releases. As always, thank you for our sponsor, DraftKings, promo code THPN, hockey_royalty on Twitter. You can find all of the articles coming out daily at hockeyroyalty.com. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate your time, and hope to talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, Brandon. It was a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks again for Chris Peters to coming on here on Hockey Royalty, talking all things draft. It wouldn't be possible without our best sponsor, DraftKings. Hockey fans, the pursuit of the Stanley Cup is on, and DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL, has an unbelievable offer for the most exciting playoffs in sports. New customers can bet $5 on any team to win and get $100 in free bets no matter what, win or lose. Looking to turn a small bet into a big payday during the playoffs? With DraftKings same-game parlays, you can do just that. Create your own parlay by combining multiple bets, like which team will win, how many goals will be scored, and more. It's your shot at even a bigger payout. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN. Bet $5 on any NHL team to win and get $100 in free bets no matter what. That's code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, and a sports betting partner of the NHL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Thank you, Kings fans.